and welcome to Code Tutorials. In this video, we're going to explore how you can share different bits of information and display them in the form of a table on your site. The table you create can be as compact or as extensive as you like. Pagination is added automatically if there are too many rows to display neatly at once. And the information you choose to share can be anything. The fields are plain text inputs, so they accept both characters and numbers. And you can even add images. And as you can see from this example on the page, the pagination can be used to display different information that makes it seem like we're dealing with different tables. So it needn't be just an extension when you run out of space for all the table rows you want to show. Don't worry, I'll be showing you how all this works in the course of the video. We'll be covering all the widgets options, including how to set up a background, style the table borders, adjust the text typography, and more. So you'll see how to add this widget to your page, customize it with your own information, and then style it to match your site design. Now that we've seen all these examples of different designs for the widget, let's take a peek behind the curtain. Head over to the back end. And you can see that I already set up the section where I plan on putting the table. I have some title and subtitle text, as well as a section background image with the parallax effect. I added it using the section editing options. Click here to open them, and then go to the Style tab. Then for the background type, I chose Classic, which opened this image field where I added my image. Then I set its position to center, its attachment to fixed, the repeat to no repeat, and the size to cover. And on top of the image, I have my section title text. It's a very straightforward element for text input. Okay, this was just a quick rundown simply to keep you informed of what I've done beforehand. But it's not the point of this video. The data table widget is. So now let's add that to the page. Search for the data table in the Elementor sidebar. Okay, here it is. Drag it over to the right. I'm placing mine just under the section title element. By default, the data table looks like this. It has a transparent background and some placeholder text and images. There are 4 columns and 2 rows. The information in the table, or the individual table cells, is represented by these items here. By default, there are 8 of them in total. When you start to customize your table, the first thing you can do is set the number of rows that will be visible on each page. I'm going to set 6 for that. And then, we can't see it because my table only has 2 rows, but we'd get the pagination shown under the table. We'll see it later when I've added more rows. After that, we can enable the row counter. If we switch this option to yes, then each row will be numbered. We have these numbers in a new column at the front of the table. And using the counter cell width option, we can adjust the width of this new column. This is helpful if you end up with a large number of rows, or if you change the font size for the numbers so they need more space. Alright, let me clear this. And switch the option back to no, as my design doesn't include numbered rows. There we go. The table is back to how it was. And we've reached the headings. There are 4 items here and they represent the 4 column titles. So this text here can be changed using the headings item options. Each item is a different column title or heading. Let's open the first one. As you can see, there is a column title field, and we can type over the dummy text here to replace the title with our own. Give me a sec. Okay, we can see the text has appeared here. After adding the title, you can use the column width option to set how wide the column with that title will be. I'm going to set 20% for mine. Now I'll customize the other column titles and skip ahead while I do so. Okay, I've customized the 4 default column titles, but I want to add a 5th column, so I'll click here to do that. And the new item has the same options we've seen already. So I'll quickly set the title I want and adjust the width. I've been using 20% throughout, so all my columns are the same width. Now, if we look at the table, it has 5 columns and they all have new titles. So that's the headings items section done. And that brings us to the items section. As I mentioned earlier, all of these items are actually different table cells. By tackling each cell as a different item, you can firstly arrange your information however you like, And secondly, add precisely the content you want. When I open the first item, you can see it has the item type option. So you can choose for each of these whether you want to use text or images. And this is what I'll be doing now. I'll customize all of these cells and add a few more besides. So our column titles are done and we're dealing with the cells or items now. So in the item type option, I'll leave image for the first one. In fact, I plan on using images for the whole first row, meaning my first 5 items will have visual content. The cell items are arranged to go horizontally from left to right when you look at them on the page. Now I need to select my image to replace the default one. I have the one I want already in my media library. One quick note about the image. You'll want to make sure the images you pick have more or less the same height. This will prevent the table from looking uneven, especially if it spills over onto other pages. Okay, insert media. And here's my first image now. With that said, we can pick what proportions we want for the image. You have numerous options here, and you can try them out to see how they work with the information you want to show and the table look you're going for. However, the image I uploaded, as well as all the others I prepared, already have suitable dimensions, so I'll keep this set to original. Then we have the item link field where we can add a URL to whatever address suits us. As this is just a tutorial, I'll set a hashtag here. This will make my image look like it's clickable. Okay, that's one item done. Moving on to the next one. I'll select the item type, image, then upload the image, and actually we can skip ahead now as you've seen how the image upload goes. Alright, all the images I wanted are here. My first table row is completed. And at the moment the table itself looks like this. Now I'm going to tackle my second row. The first 5 table cells are filled with images, which means the first 5 items here are done. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm going to open 6. Of course, if you lose count, you can always open an item to check whether it's done or not. Okay, in my 6th item, for item type, instead of switching to image, I'll keep the text setting. And then in the field right underneath, I'm going to change the item text. There. And again, I'll set a hashtag as a link placeholder to make my cell content look clickable. Now, if we look at the text, it not only looks clickable, it's gained an underline as well. Don't worry, whether you use an underline or not is something that can be adjusted within the style settings. We'll be covering that too. Alright, I'm going to customize the rest of these items and make many more besides to fill up my table. So let's skip ahead while I do that. Okay, here we are. I have entered the information to fill up and expand my table. So it's gotten quite a bit bigger, and I'm going to keep adding content to it, but I wanted to show you something before I carry on with my customization, and that is the pagination. If you recall, one of the first things I set is that I want to have 6 rows per page, and if we look at the table, it now has 6 rows. We're not counting the table headings, that's not part of the row numbers. So, my table has 6 rows and it's not supposed to show more than that on a single page. This means if I add a new table cell now, it will tip over onto a new page and the pagination will appear automatically. Let's see it in action. Add item, and there. My table now has pagination as it has more content than it can show on one page. I'm going to carry on adding new items and customizing them until I create the same size table for my second page. But that's going to take a couple of minutes, so I'll skip ahead. Okay, here we are. My table is done. We can see both page 1 and page 2 are complete. I added all the content I wanted, and when I use the pagination, I can switch between the table pages seamlessly. Which means my table has its form and content and I can start styling it shortly. I'll be setting a background at that point as well, so you'll see how the visibility changes. And we'll go through the various style options that you get with the data table widget. However, before we do that, there are 2 more sections among the options in the content tab. One is the developer tools. There is just one option here, and when we switch its setting to yes, it displays the widget in the form of a WordPress shortcode, which can easily be copied for use elsewhere on our site. Okay, I'll switch it off. And after that, we have the help section. It contains some helpful links and resources, including access to our help center in case you need it. Alright, that's it for the content tab. Let's take a look at the style tab now. In the first section here, we can style some general things about the table, such as the table layout. The default setting is auto, and we can see what it looks like on the right. The alternative to that is fixed, which has predefined and fixed column widths. Generally, the fixed layout would create an even division of space in the table. However, I achieved the same thing by setting the column width within the headings items options. Additionally, if you set the column widths, then this option won't have any effect. You can see that nothing changes if I switch from auto to fixed. That's because the items options trump the settings here under style. Okay, I'll put this back and we can carry on. The option after this is for setting the table alignment. The default setting is left. You can see there's no change if I select it. But we can also pick the center. That centers all the table content, or we can select right, which puts the content on the right. For my plan design, I'll put the content in the center. Okay. After that, we have the minimal width option. It's for setting the width of the entire table. When I start to increase, nothing much happens until I reach 1300 pixels and over. This is the width of my grid and the space that my data table is set to fit. Going over that value adds a slider to the element because it's wider now than the grid allowance. This is a really useful feature if you set a large number of columns and want to keep their content easily visible. However, given that the information in my table was neat and visible already, I'll simply clear this. Okay, there. Following that, there's the background type option. Click here to enable it if you want to see a background. Then you get the option of picking a color or uploading an image. Choosing a color is simple. You have this user-friendly color picker. I'll put white as my background color. But if you prefer, you can opt for an image as the table background. There's an example of what that might look like on the widgets page. Let me find it. There. This example of the widget's design includes a background image. Okay, going back to the options. The next thing we have is the headings row background color. This option allows us to set a separate color as the background for the column titles. You can see what it might look like here. And we also have the first column background color. This will affect the first column in the table, whether it's like mine, filled with actual content, or if it's numbering the rows, in case you enable the row counter option at the start. Okay, after that we have the border style option. It's set to all, so right now we have a light gray border dividing all the table cells. This border is all around the table as well as the individual cells. But if we switch the setting here to inside only, then the border will be only between the cells rather than all around the table. Admittedly, it's a bit difficult to see with the blue element frame and my section background image. So, to make it easier to spot, I'll switch the border type to solid and increase the border width. Alright, now we can see the wide border that's only on the inside of the table. But if I switch back to all, we'll be able to see the same wide border around the table as well as between the cells. As for the border options, besides setting the type and width, we can also set a color. That can be anything you like. I do plan on using a border, so I'll add the hex code for a darker shade of gray. There. And I'll make the border thinner by setting 1 pixel for the width. And keep the type solid as well as the style set to all. Alright. After this, we have the heading cell padding. As you can see, only the top and bottom fields are active, which means we can add padding only over and under the column title text. We don't need the left and right sides because the column has a set width. Now, if I start to increase the value here, we can see how the space over and under the title changes. I'm going to set 29 pixels for this in both fields. And then we have the cell padding option. for sorting out the padding of the content in the table cells. All fields are active here, and if I start to increase, you can see how the space in the table changes. The main change, of course, is still at the top and bottom, as the column width remains fixed regardless of the padding values. Then, as there is no need for me to enter anything for the right or left sides, let me clear this, I'll click here to delink the fields. And then I'll enter 17 pixels at the top and 17 pixels at the bottom. There we go. Now there's this space over and under the content. Okay, this completes the first section of the options. The next one is main title style. Let's take a look at it. The main title refers to the column titles or the headings, whatever you prefer to call them. In here we can change things like the main title tag. So you can pick any of the H tags or even a P tag and it will affect this text here. Then we have the main title color. We can use it to change the color of the column titles. I'll set mine to be plain black. There. And we can also make changes to the main title typography settings. The typography settings are composed of several options, such as the font family. You can scroll through this list or search for the font if you know its name. There's also the font size. You can increase it with the slider or by typing in a value. I'll set 17 pixels for mine. We also have the weight option if you'd like to change the font weight. I'll set 500 for that. Then there's the transform option if you want to make your column titles, for example, uppercase. We can see what that would look like. And I'll be keeping this look for my planned table design. After that, we have the style option, where you can pick any of these settings. The decoration, if you want to add a line over, under, or through the titles. And finally, the line height, letter spacing, and word spacing options if you'd like to make any adjustments to the spaces there. And those were the options you get under typography. In the section under that, we have the cell style options. This is where we can make changes to the look of the table cell content. The first option lets us change the cell text color. As you can see, this affects all the text in the table other than the headings. So I'll set solid black for this as well. And after that, we have the cell text typography options. They are the same as the typography options we've seen already, so I won't waste your time by going over them again. Instead, I'll make the settings I need and we'll carry on. That will be weight 500, and that's it. Moving on. The option after this is for changing the text link color. Basically, any text item that you added a link to can have a different color than non-linked text. However, all my text content is linked, so when I change the color, all the items change. Again, that's because my items are linked, but if I had any that weren't, they'd show their original black color. I'll clear this because I already set my preferred color. Then, following that, we have another set of typography settings. As you can see, the options within are identical to the ones before. The only difference is that these here would help us change the look of linked text items. If your table has a mix of linked and non-linked items, you can use these to create distinct looks for each. But I don't need these as all my text is linked and I already made the settings I wanted using the cell text typography options. Finally, we have the text link underline option. It's set to initial underline. That gets us this line, which is visible under any linked text items and which has this animated movement effect. The alternative to this setting is hover underline, which has the line appearing only when someone hovers over linked text. So we get this look. And there's also the possibility of picking none, which lets us remove the underline entirely. So, hovering now produces no change on hover. The only thing indicating the text is linked is that the cursor turns into a pointer. This is the look I'll be sticking with. Okay, this brings us to the final section, pagination style. These options will help us style the pagination, which by default looks like this. And the first thing we can change is its alignment. Currently it's set on the right, but we can move it to the left, so it's here, or we can put it in the center. I'm going to put mine back on the right. Another thing we have here is the pagination typography. That's not so much for the arrows on the sides as it is for these numbers here. We have the usual selection of typography options, and since we know them, I'll set what I need and we'll carry on. Size 16 pixels and weight 500. That's all. Now, under the typography, we have two switches and each reveals different options. The normal one is on and it shows us the options we have for styling the pagination when it's displayed normally, as opposed to being hovered over or active in indicating which page of the table we're on. The first thing we can change is the pagination color. You can set any shade you like and both the icons on the sides and the numbers will show the change. I'm going to set a light gray for this. Perfect. Then we can set a background color for the pagination. So if you set something, you'll have that color showing like this. Don't worry, you can adjust the coverage and I'll be doing that for my white background. There it is. And those were the options under normal. Let's see what we have under active hover. Anything we change here will be visible when we hover or on the actively selected page number. We can set a different pagination color and then number 1 has changed its color as it's the active page, the one we're currently on. And if I hover over number 2, it changes as well. This is a useful option if your table has a lot of pages, or even just a couple like mine. So I'll set an almost black shade for my pagination active hover color. Okay, and there's also the background color. You can immediately see how it changes for the active page as well as anything you hover over. Alright, carrying on with the options. We have these fields where we can replace the pagination arrow icons. We have the option of picking something new from the icon library. It's quite extensive, and you'll have a choice of arrows for both left and right side. Or you can upload a custom SVG, which is what I'll do. The first field is for the left arrow, so this is the one I need. Insert media. And there's my new arrow for navigating to previous pages. Now I'll set a matching one for the right, for next pages. This one, and insert. Okay, now I have new matching pagination arrows. After that, there's the pagination arrow size option. By increasing the value here, we increase the size of the icons. You can see they're much bigger now. For this, I'll set 23 pixels. Then we have the pagination item border radius. A lengthy name that mentions a border, but essentially what this option does is that it will let us round out the corners of the squares, which are actually holders, showing the background color. So when I start to increase, we can see that all the edges have gotten rounder. As I want the square look, I'll set 0 here. Perfect. After that, there's the pagination item width option. By increasing the value here, we can make the holders, or the squares if you prefer, wider. You can see how they look now. I'm going to put 39 pixels for this. And then we have the same thing, only for the height. So by using these two options in concert, we can create perfect squares, or circles if you add a radius on top of this. However, for my plan design, I'll put 29 pixels here. Okay. Our next option is the space between pagination items, which lets us create these gaps here. I'm going to put 7 pixels for this. And finally, we have the pagination margin top option. It lets us separate the pagination from the table. So we can create a gap here. And I'll set 17 pixels for this. That's it. I can press update as my table is done and all the work is finished. You can see what the design I planned for looks like. There are 5 columns and 6 rows in each page. The pagination is here and very easy to use when I need to access different pages of my table. Everything works and looks as it should. Now, if you're thinking that this table looks familiar, that's because I made it as a copy of one of the examples from the widgets page. It's the page we started from, and it contains many more examples of what you can do with the data table widget. Of course, how you use it depends mostly on what role you need it to play and what type of information you want to display and share. I copied this class listing, but that's just one possibility. This widget is very adaptable, so you can use it to display different kinds of data. The important thing is that you now have an idea of how this widget works and what you can do with it. We hope you found this tutorial on the data table widget from the Qi Addons for Elementor Premium plugin to be helpful. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please drop us a line in the comment section below. Also, make sure to subscribe to our channel and be the first to learn about any new tutorials and theme guides. Thank you for watching.